Across our nation, schools celebrate Read Across America with guest speakers and fun activities. At Chesapeake High School in Pasadena, Maryland, we celebrated our 11th annual Day of Reading with authors, artists, astrophysicists, and even a former NFL football player. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our 2018 Read Across America event.
I have the honor of introducing a brilliant astrophysicist who has studied at Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins University. The Johns Hopkins University. He has even participated in multiple research projects. However, he is also an amazing author who has been able to travel and share his stories with a variety of people, even on the summits of a volcano in Hawaii. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tim Livengood.
All right, hello, good afternoon, or as they say in Hawaii at this time of day, good morning, because it's morning in Hawaii. It's anyway. Well, not the part of Hawaii I go to. You said Hawaii. What do you think of when you think Hawaii? Hawaii. You think of the fact that there's two I's at the end? Do you remember the apostrophe in the middle and that it's actually Hawaii? I know a limited number of Hawaiian words, but they're impressive when you hear them because it's more syllables than you thought could come out of a person at one time. Like a na'iho'omalu. It's a beach, a particular beach. A na'iho'omalu. It's a beach. Anyway, so I do go to Hawaii pretty often, but as I was jesting with the possibly pseudonymous Victoria 3 here, the part of Hawaii I go to is not the part of Hawaii that I know you're thinking of when she said Hawaii. You're thinking of palm trees, and you're thinking of people maybe not wearing so much clothing and music. No, pina coladas are Caribbean. Caribbean. It's Mai Tais are Hawaiian. And playing your ukulele, or if you're playing slack key guitar or kiho'alu guitar. But as it happens, the part of Hawaii I go to has no palm trees, it has no grass, it has very few living things. It is the top of Mauna Kea, which is an extinct volcano. It's fortunate that it's extinct because it's inconvenient to be on the extinct ones, the extant volcanoes that are busy blowing up right now. So you've got Mauna Kea, to the south of it, Mauna Loa, which is an active volcano. Over to the right of Mauna Loa, you've got Kilauea, which is an active volcano. Over to the left of Mauna Loa, you have Hualalai, which is a dormant volcano. It hasn't erupted since 1830 or so. Up to the north, you've got, Kohalu. And then down to the south, you've got the Loihi'i Seamount, which is underwater and is due to break surface in about 20,000 years, last I remember reading about it. And this, by the way, has nothing to do with anything else that but as long as you mentioned the Hawaii thing, I thought I should, give you some place. So the top of the mountain, it actually extends well above the tree line, well above the clouds, which is why everything is dry and arid and horrible up there on the top. The only living things I have seen at the top of the mountain are people, a few mice inside the observatory, a vast number of ladybugs on the door of the observatory, and we don't know how that happened, and 2 turkeys, because there was a brush fire down in the Hu'umu'ula saddle between Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, and it scared the turkeys, and they ran up the mountain to get away from the smoke. And they were running around at the summit of the mountain on their way over to the other side to get away from the brush fire. So, not much living up there. I have seen evidence of living things, and that's okay. That brings me to one of the things I do professionally. Professionally, I'm a planetary scientist. I'm an astronomer, and I also do some work in an area called astrobiology, which is the current word we have for looking at other places in the universe and trying to understand whether there could be life. And the reason we have a new current word is the word that was popular in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s was exobiology, and folks pointed out that would be easier to study if we had any examples of biology that were not from here on Earth. So it was kind of a field with no subject matter. So the current term is astrobiology, with the idea that we are using the tools of astronomy to try to understand biology elsewhere. And a big issue in that is trying to understand what life looks like here on Earth. I mean, it seems kind of obvious. You seem reasonably alive, most of you. I mean, you are high school students, so only about half, but still, reasonably alive. Okay, come on, that was capital A #1 humor. I know my delivery is solid, so anyway. So we are trying to understand living things elsewhere, and one of the tricky aspects is that if I were to look at a distant planet orbiting another star, my chances of actually seeing anything alive on that planet are beyond minuscule. You know, if you look at the Earth from space, you can't see a living thing, but you can see evidence of life. And the most common thing that gives you evidence of life is basically poop. You know, everything, as I believe a memorable children's book once put it, everything poops. And now, of course, you have to broaden your definition of poop. When you breathe out, you're breathing out waste chemicals. That is waste, so we could call it poop if you want to. The oxygen in our air is plant poop. You know, it's a waste product that plants make in the process of committing their own life cycle. Methane that's in the air is bacteria poop. And since we have bacteria in our intestines, guess who else makes methane? But these chemicals in the air, now that's something I can see. I can see a whole planet. And that's an opportunity to see if there could possibly be life there. So I can look for that kind of thing. Now, I realize that this is about reading, but I'm really trying to get at a general sort of thing. In order to do this kind of activity, like the work I do professionally as a scientist, you need creativity, because you can't just say, well, I'm going to look at another planet and I'm going to see life. First of all, it took us an incredibly long time to develop telescopes that were capable of seeing other planets outside our solar system. The ones that we have can only see planets that are bigger than the planet Jupiter. So we're not seeing living things. We're not seeing planets where there could be living things. We have to learn about these things through figuring out what are the consequences of life. We have to think creatively to think what are the possible results of other processes that I do understand, that I can see, that could tell me, would there have to be something like a small rocky planet? Is a small rocky planet something you have to have life on it? If there were life on it, how could I tell if that's true? And so really the part I want to get to, this is a rough segue, but the part I want to get to is just creativity in general. And that's really what you need. My job in doing astronomy and exploring other planets, and I don't physically go there, I have to be creative. I have to create new ways of exploring things. I have to be creative with what information I've got. And that muscle, that creativity muscle that enables you, the secret, it's been said a lot, so this is old thinking, this is not new thinking, but the secret to success in science, to what people see as genius, is to look at exactly the same thing that everybody else has been looking at for their entire lives on the whole planet, and see it differently from everybody else. You know, again, in my field, the moon is something that we thought we understood. We actually sent people there. We picked up bits of moon. We brought them back here to Earth. We've been looking at them for 40-some years now. A lot of them are still stored in tightly closed boxes in Houston right now. There are samples from the Apollo missions that have never been opened. And I really want to open some of them, but in a very special way, because I have things I want to look for. And after all that time, the one thing we were really absolutely certain we knew about the moon was that there's absolutely no water on the moon. Just drier than dry as a bone, just as dry as could be, until we actually looked at the moon with instruments that were not designed for the moon. Because when people were designing instruments to go and study the moon, the one thing they knew they didn't need to waste any effort on was looking for water. And so they designed instruments so they were blind in that area because they needed to emphasize other things. But then we had a couple of instruments that were intended for a completely different purpose. One of them was intended for going to visit the planet Saturn, and that was the Cassini spacecraft. And the other one was on a spacecraft called Deep Impact, which was named before the movie came out. And they turned Deep Impact. Actually, I was involved with Deep Impact at the time, but not with this experiment. And we looked at the moon, and there were signs that there's water in the surface of the moon. Not much, but more than nothing. Okay, I am funny to you. What is it? Or is it just you guys are funny and I should find out so that I will get in on it? I'm just killing her now. Okay. But this was a case where we were limited by our thinking. We thought we knew what was possible, and so we never opened our eyes to what was actually in front of us there. And it took a long time to finally get around to it. That was a matter of, well, it was creativity, but it also took aiming an instrument that wasn't intended for that purpose at it and then believing what you saw. And that's the hardest part, believing what you saw. I'm a storyteller. And indeed, I have told stories to people on the summit of Mauna Kea, but mainly it's because as an astronomer, when the clouds come in, there's not much else to do other than occasionally watch really bad movies that are available on TV late at night. Or these days, you can spend all your time Googling and looking on Facebook. So telling stories. Now, coming up with new stories is, again, you need to look at the world as it is and see what nobody else saw, even though everyone else has been looking at exactly the same thing as you. And I have found a tool that is unbelievably helpful in igniting your creativity, something where this will give you a new way of looking at the world that you never imagined before. It is extremely simple. It is toddlers. Toddlers are really helpful because they're crazy. Children are nuts. Not really nuts, of course, but children look at the world the same way you and I do, except that they don't know what the heck is supposed to be there. And they're trying to put it together. And you get weird things out of kids. Like, well, mine are my main inspiration this way now. Admittedly, they are now, let me see, I can do the math in my head, 24 and 22. So they're not serving the job of being toddlers so well for me anymore. I have to work with what I got when they were like 4 years old. But there were things like, Daddy, can you tell me the story of Sally the sea grasshopper? Sure. A grasshopper that lives in the ocean. I can do that. Or, Dad, one time, this is one I tell, oh, you'll like this one because it's gruesome and horrible. I knew, see? Gruesome and horrible. My little children asked me, they said, Daddy, well, actually, they didn't ask that part yet. We were at the table, and my wife was getting annoyed with my children, because that's the job of parents, to get annoyed with children. And she said, children, we are not animals. We have table manners. And because my children are my children, and they are smart aleck little twerps, they said, well, why don't animals have table manners? And my wife looked at me, and I looked at my wife, and well, clearly we had to answer this one. And so I asked them an important and meaningful question that I have found has served me very well in the years since then. The question I will ask you. The question is this: do you want the truth, or do you want a colorful lie? Something is wrong with you if you want the truth. No, you want a colorful lie. And they say, we want a colorful lie, Daddy. I said, well, of course, the reason animals don't have table manners is the obvious reason. Animals don't have tables. Why don't animals have tables? Well, sure, once they did, but they don't have tables now because they all wore out because they weren't able to make any more tables. You see, once animals had all manner of things that you and I know today. They had tables and chairs and lamps and all kinds of nice things. In fact, they had a lot of really nice woodworking, because the fact is, the animal world, animals just really enjoyed working with wood. You know, they had power tools. Power tools are wonderful things, but they can be dangerous. You know, when they tell you to keep that safety guard on those power tools, they mean it. So animals, they once had, of course, all of these fine furnishings because they enjoyed making them. It was a lovely, very fulfilling experience. But because they didn't pay attention to the safety instructions from the manufacturer and sometimes took the guards off of their table saws, well, you know, you might lose a finger here or a thumb there. Horses really messed up. I mean, they just got down to one finger. It was bad. You know, bears, they turned around and that tail was gone with that radial arm saw. You got to be careful. Well, once you've gone ahead and managed to get yourself down to just one finger, it is a little hard to operate your radial arm saw or your table saw or your drill press. And so the animals just had to make do with the tables they had. And after a while, it's hard to handle a fork when you've just got the one finger. So, you know, after that, they lost their table manners, they lost their tables, and that's why they're like that today. And because we want to have our table manners, we follow the safety instructions for our power tools. And my children said, "Is that true?" And I said, "No, of course it's not true. It's a colorful lie." So do you want the truth or the colorful lie? Well, you always want both, really. But you have to go with the order. Now, that was one. Okay, so I have a gruesome sense of humor, and so that's where and this is a 5-year-old child I'm telling this horrible story to. I am a bad dad. But in general, though, again, you need inventiveness, you need creativity, and it is something that you can exercise. Like I said, one way is if you have any handy children, just talk to them, because they will say something crazy, because they will say something where they're trying to put the world together, and it kind of makes sense. Like, why does the moon go down at night? Is it because it's falling out of the sky? Sure, that's it. The moon is actually an enormous toaster waffle that is being launched from a giant toaster and flying across the sky and landing for the giant so he can enjoy his waffles. The sun is also a toaster waffle, but with a hotter toaster that's farther away, and it sails across the sky. And you know, this was why the world was cold to start with, because the toaster waffles weren't warm enough and they needed to, and you can work from that and you can come up with a story. And I've been telling Rachel and the Sun Toaster for 20 years now. Maybe I'll actually tell it as a whole story in a minute. Something I've been working on is, again, the water on the moon things has been, when we look at the moon and we try to figure out what's going on, you have to open yourself up to the possibility that there is something that you're looking at that simply does not make sense according to the, you know, we have a tendency, you have an explanation that mostly works, and sure, there's a few details that have to be figured out. And part of the trick in being a scientist and being creative is to look at those few details and try to think of a new way of looking at this whole system that makes those details fit along with everything else. Now, let me just check. All right, so I didn't want to just be me talking, and I was pestering you for questions earlier, and of course you looked at me with embarrassment because what were you supposed to ask me a question about? But I'm going to try it again. The idea here is we're trying to figure out how to free up our own creativity. We can do that in literary work, we can tell stories, you can write, and in science. Do you have any questions about something that strikes you as weird or crazy about the world? And tell me, do you want the truth as best I know it, or do you want the colorful lie? I hear a request for a colorful lie, but I don't know what I'm making a colorful lie about. How babies are made is the question. Do you want the truth, or would you like a colorful lie? What's that?
Colorful lie.
You want the, okay, I hear colorful lie over here, I hear truth over here. Well, truth was asked for first. So let's see. How are babies made? Well, first you need to acquire a fairly substantial amount of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Then you need to mix these together until you've got a good slurry of chan pea. Once you've got your slurry, of all of these chemicals mixed together, then you need to pull them out bit by bit and arrange the individual molecules in the form of different amino acids until you can nail them together to make long ladder-like things that we call DNA, or don't nudge anything. Once you've got that, you put them inside little baggies of goo, and we call those little baggies of goo cells, and then we stick a bunch of those together, and if you just keep doing that over and over and over again, soon enough, you have a baby. Now, over here, you wanted a colorful lie. Victoria 3. Not Victoria 1, not Victoria 2, but Victoria 3. You wanted a colorful lie. Well, the way you do it is you inherit genetic material from your parents, and then one night when the moon is full and the bats are flying high overhead, you stick a memory stick in your ear and download your genetic inheritance into the memory stick. Then, when two memory sticks really love each other, then you put them together in your pocket. And soon enough, you can take out a third tiny USB memory stick, or probably it's USB-C these days, and you plug that into your computer and hit print, and out of your 3D printer comes a new baby. Isn't that lovely? The magic of creation. Any other questions? Or did covering human reproduction do enough for you? Do I believe that the moon landing was faked? Well, so first of all, 6 moon landings, thank you. And presumably you're asking, were all 6 faked?
I guess so. I mean, everybody says that they were.
Well, let's think about this. It's a matter of probability. We've got, how many people were in on it? Well, let's see now. Grumman was responsible for the LEM, so they probably had probably a few 100,000 employees. And North American Rockwell built the rocket motors, which we know were incapable of going to the moon by this theory, so yeah, that's another 50,000 or so. Then we probably, I mean, overall, when I think about, between the different contractors, Grumman, North American Rockwell, Boeing, Lockheed, all these different people contributing to building what was evidently all fake, that's like 300,000 people who were probably in on the lie. Then, of course, we had the Soviet scientists who were tracking radio signals that they said came from Apollo spacecraft that were on their way to the moon, that were reporting back television images of people in the vehicles. So overall, I'd say if you can persuade yourself that roughly 500,000 people held an airtight conspiracy, complete with the collusion of our largest enemy nation, that was our biggest enemy, agreeing to pretend it was true, then you might be able to sell the idea that it was all fake. But otherwise, I would say probability is not on your side on the idea that the moon landing was fake, and so I'm going to have to go with real. Plus, I've actually met 3 of the Apollo astronauts at this point. 3 of the ones who actually walked on the surface, or who say they did. And they hold that line pretty well. And Buzz Aldrin, now he's older now, okay, so he's not likely to deck me. But when he was 72, he decked a guy who was trying to push that line that he encountered on the street outside a meeting. And when a 72-year-old man beats you up, it's just time to say, sure, fine. Whatever you say, mister, I'm going with it. So I'm going with Buzz on this one. He was there. Next. Wait, you already asked about baby making. What's that? Okay, we have a question. Is the earth flat? Did you want the truth or did you want the colorful lie? You want the colorful lie. Is the earth flat? Of course not. The earth is round. If you just look up at night with a good enough telescope, you can see people on the other side. We're on the inside of an enormous round ball. And the clouds are just held in the middle on sticks, sticking out of that bright little sun thing in the middle, but you can't see them because the sun is so bright. And that's why when you go to the bathroom, the water goes down, and it all goes down and out to the outside of the earth because the earth is whirling around so hard. And so the outside of the earth, this is why we live on the inside, because the outside is covered with all of our sewage waste. And it's horrible, which is why you never want to go there, and that's why we live on the inside of the earth. Yes, sir. Is water... That's not a matter of fact, that's a matter of opinion. I have no opinion on that subject. What's that? Why do kangaroos have pockets? Well, some will tell you. Oh, I forgot to ask. What's that? Oh, well, but I do want to check. I forgot to ask you, did you want the colorful lie or the naked truth? The colorful lie. People will tell you that it's for keeping their little kangaroo babies in. Obviously not true. My daughter told me the story about this, actually. You know, the crazy one with the sea grasshopper? She said that once upon a time there was a mama kangaroo and she had a baby kangaroo, and there was a bad man who was chasing them, and she had been baking bread that day, and so she put on her apron so that she, because she had been baking bread, but when the bad man was chasing them, was going to get her little baby kangaroo, she put her little baby kangaroo in the pocket of her apron, and it was so useful that she just kept it on until her fur grew over it, and that's why she has a pocket. Admittedly, it's a shorter story, but this was a story told by a toddler, so, what can you do? Yeah. Yes, children are crazy. We had one over here. All of a sudden, you think it's all of a sudden? We have been planning this for decades. Back when Clyde Tombaugh went and discovered Pluto, vast numbers of astronomers were saying to them, oh wait, I forgot, did you want the colorful lie or did you want the naked truth? The colorful lie. Vast numbers of astronomers said, oh, this cannot stand an odd number of planets in our solar system. Oh, this we cannot have. There must be 10 or there must be 8. No 9 can be allowed. But it took a while to find what we needed in order to settle this matter. And finally, this annoying guy, he's annoying because he's cool and I am not cool, and therefore he's annoying. Mike Brown, you can tell he's cool because he has a little ankle bracelet, and that's the secret, the essence to cool as far as I can tell. You know, I should probably just get one of those and then I could cover the cool thing. Anyway, Mike went and discovered something far out there in deep space, something with the fascinating name of 2003 UB313. Because we astronomers are nothing if we're not good at names. And the thing is, he figured if it was, all we could really tell was how bright it was, and if it were shiny, then it was a little bit bigger than Pluto. And if it was dirty and cruddy, if it were dirty and cruddy, let us use the subjunctive correctly, then it would be a lot bigger than Pluto. And that forced the International Astronomical Union to finally have to come up with a definition of a word we have been casually using for maybe about 5,000 years, planet, a word that we never actually got around to defining, which is just those lights in the sky that move around. And so either Mike was going to be the discoverer of the 10th planet, or he was going to be the guy who dethroned Pluto. And it can tell you the answer that he has a book out called How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming. Also, they did have to come up with a name for the object he found. And planets get Latin names. And things smaller than planets get Greek names until they get really small when they get cute names. And so Mike, once they knew for sure that it was going to be called not a planet, it is Eris, E-R-I-S, which is the goddess of discord, who started the Trojan War in Greek mythology by throwing the golden apple into, as far as I could tell, like a cocktail party of the gods that said, for the fairest, and that caused trouble. And it has a moon of its own, and the moon is Dishymnia, I think. He has not revealed anywhere that I know of what the Latin name was going to be if it ended up being a planet. I guess he's keeping that in store just in case he discovers an actual planet in the outer solar system. So now, to the tedious reason is that we have 8 because we have more than 7 and less than 9. There's not a good reason. It's a bad reason, which is it had to be a number. And one of the tricky things, we tried one possibility was to call a planet would be anything big enough to be round. And that also forces you to define what exactly is round. I mean, potatoes are round, but some potatoes are rounder than other potatoes. And so which potatoes are the right shape to be a planet and which one is the shape to be a baking potato? Because space potato is a term we casually toss around for funny shaped objects in space because we're like that. And then it gets worse because there aren't 8 planets. There are at this point about 3,000 known planets. It's just the vast majority of them are orbiting stars other than ours. So, we don't have enough names for that. Oh, they're going away. I've driven them off. But those who are not yet gone, so you're going to go for your second. Sure. Do I have a 6-minute story? I can barely blow my nose in 6 minutes. Shh, shh, shh. Which 6-minute story did you need? Oh, the bricks. Bricks, you need to know about bricks. Once upon a time, there was a king who was the king of the richest country in the whole entire world. Now, he was rich in all of your typical ways of being rich. Shh, it's a brilliant story. You will love it. It involves math. He had gems. He had gold. He had negotiable bearer bonds. He had all manner of wonderful things. But the best and most important thing he had was sitting on a little pillar right in front of his throne where he could contemplate it day in, day out. He sat on his throne contemplating because his country owned the one, the only, the singular brick in the whole entire world. That brick was the product of years of labor and research because it was the very first brick that had been invented in the world. The king looked at that brick and he got to thinking, what can you do with a brick? Now, this was before the comic strip Crazy Cat, so he didn't have any ideas. For those of you who know your Edward Harriman. But he had a thought. He picked up that brick. He took that brick outside. He put the brick on the ground. He stood up in that brick, and he said, this is fine. This is really excellent. I can see a long way. But, said the king, picking up his brick, I could see even farther if I had twice as many bricks. So he went back in his throne room, he put the brick on his pillar, and he called in his wise men, his advisors, his sages, and his scientists. He said, sages, scientists, wise men, and advisors, I need more bricks. I need twice as many bricks. I need another brick. Can you make me another brick? And they said, Your Highness, we have recently been going over the paperwork on exactly how this brick was acquired and built under contract. We are fairly certain that with a minimum of effort, say a year's work and 1,000 men, we can give you another brick. And the king said, all right, go do it. Off they went. About 11 months later, and with only the labor of 500 men, they came back and they said, Your Highness, we have succeeded. We have built a second brick. Oh, excellent, said the king. Let's take it outside. They took it outside. They put one brick on the ground, put the other brick on top of it. The king stood up on top of it. He said, oh, this is fine. This is really excellent. I can see a long way. But, said the king, I could see even farther if I had twice as many bricks. So he went in his throne room. He called the sages, the scientists, the wise men, and the advisors. Wise men, advisors, sages, scientists, I need more bricks. I need twice as many bricks. I need 2 more bricks. And they said, Your Highness, we have learned the method. We have kept the means of production handy just in case we anticipated this problem. We believe we can make you 2 more bricks in only 6 months. Excellent, said the king. Get to it. 5.5 months later, they came back with 2 bricks. They said, here you go, your highness. They took him outside. He stack up 3 bricks and then 1 brick next to it as a little step. This is fine. This is really excellent. I could see a long way, said the king. But I could see even farther if I had twice as many bricks. He called his scientists and sages, the advisors and the wise men. I keep changing the order. He said, I need more bricks. I need twice as many bricks. You need 4 bricks, your highness. That's it exactly. Don't anticipate your king. I need 4 more bricks. And then I will have, how many is it? 8 bricks. They said, your highness, we can come back. We can make you 4 more bricks in only 1 month. We're good at this stuff. 5 weeks later, because they had finally figured out how government contracting works, they came back with their 4 more bricks. They piled it up. The king had 8 bricks. Fine, excellent. See a long way. See even farther if I had twice as many bricks. Now this kept going for a while. The king now had 8 bricks. He needed 16 bricks. He needed 32 bricks. He needed 64 bricks. He needed 128 bricks. He needed 256 bricks. He needed 512 bricks. He needed 1,024 bricks. He needed 2,048 bricks. He needed 4,096 bricks. At some point, the scientists, or possibly the sages, said, your highness, what do you see up there? And the king said, I see dismissal time. And you'll just have to wait till next year to get the rest.